Hello, everybody. Welcome to Anderson Ranch Art Center and our summer faculty lecture series. My name is Emil Gorman, and I am the Digital Fabrication Studio Coordinator here at the ranch. Before we begin, please take a moment to silence your cell phones. I want to start by recognizing that Anderson Ranch campus resides on the historic tribal lands of the Ute people who called this area home for over 800 years. In honor of this legacy, we focus on building an inclusive community here, maintaining this as a place for inspiration and creativity in the center of the Rocky Mountains. I would also like to remind everyone to attend the ranch-wide orientation right here in Shermer tomorrow morning at 8:45 a.m. Tonight's program will consist of 2 faculty lectures followed by a Q&A. First, I would like to introduce David McDonald. After receiving his Master's of Fine Arts degree, he joined the faculty of the School of Art and Design at Syracuse University. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, McDonald's work received most of its creative inspiration from his investigation of his African heritage. Looking at a variety of design sources in the vast creative tradition of African continent, McDonald draws much of his inspiration from the myriad examples of surface decoration that manifests itself in the many ethnic groups of sub-Saharan Africa, as pottery, decoration, textiles, body decoration, and architectural decoration. McDonald's work spans the complete spectrum of ceramic forms and utilitarian nature. McDonald received the Excellence in Teaching Award from the National Council on Education for the Ceramic Arts in 2011. His work is in the permanent collections of the Studio Museum in Harlan, New York, Montclair Art Museum, New Jersey, Everson Museum of Art, Syracuse, New York. Galleries offering a selection of McDonald's work include Everson Museum Gift Shop in Syracuse, New York, Casandovia Artisans, Casandovia, New York, Edgewood Gallery, Syracuse, New York. Please welcome David McDonald.
Oh, hi everybody. Can you hear me? Yes. You'll regret that. I drove here, and all the way here, I was thinking, way back when this place first started, they were trying to find some place where African Americans couldn't find them. But I'm only joking. Once I got from New York State, I drove across Ohio and Illinois and Indiana. I was so glad to see mountains. You know, the scenery here is just absolutely spectacular. And I want to thank those individuals who are responsible for inviting me to come. This is my first time here, and I am honored to be asked. And I just want my students to know that I'm going to work them like rented mules. So I wanted them to start working tonight, but there's some policy about not doing that until you get some orientation. So they're going to have to catch up tomorrow. Okay, so the idea of doing a 20-minute slide presentation, when I've worked in clay, I made my first part in 1963 at Hampton Institute in Hampton, Virginia. And so I've been working in clay for about 60 years. And to be able to try to encapsulate all of that experience in 20 minutes is kind of an exercise in futility. But at any rate, you know, when I was teaching and I would give my students my slide presentation, many of them would stay awake for the first hour of it. you know. But I have a short presentation. Now, I've watched other people do slide presentations and have all these kinds of fade-ins and fade-outs and all this kind of electronic stuff, you know. I am one of those people who, although I'm working with mankind's first silica-based technology, I hate the current silica-based technology, computers. They are a frustration to me, but at any rate, so I put together some images of some of the earlier pieces I've made and some of the more recent pieces. And in some instances, there are several examples of a particular series. But this really only scratches the surface of my artistic production, because it kind of reminds me of a quote that I read in a magazine when I was in undergraduate school, an art magazine. They were interviewing a famous American sculptor by the name of David Smith. And the last question that the interviewer asked Mr. Smith was what he felt was the most difficult part of making art. And his response has stuck with me and has proven to be very true in terms of my production. And that his response was, the most difficult part about making art is for every piece you make, it generates 10 new ideas, and there's never enough time to make them all. You know, and there's a frustration that I'm beginning to feel as I enter my 80th year, that I'm running out of time. And so I'm planning on using this 2 weeks to kick ass. Okay, all right, so let's get started. Okay, this is a photograph of me and 4 of my siblings. I grew up in northern New Jersey. I was the 3rd oldest of a family of 8 boys and 1 girl. And I'm not the one in the dress. My father always said that one girl ruined a perfectly good baseball team. You know, but at any rate, I'm the one in, if you're facing the upper left-hand corner. Okay, I grew up in public housing. I didn't know much about art. I loved making stuff, and a lot of times I would go through the dumpsters in the housing project and find discarded things and turn them into toys. Okay? I ran track. I ran the mile and 2 mile, and as a result of that, I got a scholarship to an athletic scholarship to Hampton Institute. That's my photograph in my senior year to show you the ravages of time. I graduated from high school in 1963, and that was about the time that the civil rights movement was really starting to heat up. I got a scholarship to a historically black college in Hampton, Virginia, and while there, I learned a lot of things, and many of the decisions that I made were how I was going to use the skills and the information that I was acquiring, and how I was going to use it to better the predicament of African Americans in the United States. And so this is the photograph of my ceramics professor at Hampton, Joseph Gilliard. I was honored to receive a posthumous lifetime award for Mr. Gilliard's family at the last NCECA conference in Richmond, Virginia. But Mr. Gilliard was an incredible technician. I would say he was more of an artisan than an artist. He believed in technique, and he believed in tradition, and he instilled those ideas in his students. This is one of the pieces that I made during my senior year at Hampton, and it's a reaction to the civil rights movement and also the second-class citizenship of African Americans. After I graduated from Hampton, I went to the University of Michigan, where I studied under John Stevenson and Robert Stull, who were professors there. And my work started turning, although it was still somewhat about social commentary, I started developing an interest in my African heritage and conversations that I had with Professor Stull. Professor Stull was actually an African American as well, and so one of the fortunate things for me was that I was able to study with two highly skilled and influential African American ceramic artists at a time when you could probably count on one hand the number of African American ceramic professors in the United States. And so I started I started thinking about my work not being about me being a victim, but me being an heir to a tradition, an artistic tradition that goes back very, very far in Africa. It goes back millennia. In Africa, there were advanced civilizations while Europeans were still living in caves. Okay, and so I started looking at African art. This is a ceremonial cup. It's not clay, it's wood. But one of the things I discovered about ceramics in Africa, and this was true about other aspects of African art, is that they love to decorate things. It sort of appealed to the notion that in decorating something, you imbue it with a power that it acquires through this decoration, and it makes it more powerful, more utilitarian, so to speak. And so, am I pressing the right button? Oh, okay. And so I developed this carving technique that was similar. Let me go back and you can see the carved pattern on this Ibu water jug. And it inspired me to develop a carving technique that was similar to that. And these are some early examples. These are probably the late 70s, early 80s. I enjoy making pots. I'm a potter, you know, and everything I make is a vessel. Even those things that are 6 feet tall are vessels. And so these are some examples of some casseroles that I made using that carving technique. And we'll just go through this very quickly. I'm doing a workshop this session on making lidded vessels. And lidded vessels has always been a fascination of mine. The idea of being able to make two things separately and that they fit together. The whole idea of containment and reveal how the lid fits, whether the lid fits on the pot or in the pot, how the lid can be used as a way of finishing the form, or how the lid can be used as a platform for another idea, are all things that I find interested in lidded vessels. I think one of the things that I'm probably the most famous for, if I'm famous at all, is large plates. I throw large plates, and I'm going to be working on some of those during my spare time here this session. And these plates are about 18 to 24 inches in diameter. I started doing a series based upon African textile patterns. And this particular one, the central image is part of the Adinkra textile tradition. It's a symbol, and I can't pronounce its actual name, but its name translated means the knot of reconciliation. And I started using that as a central image on my plates as well. And these are just some variations on that. I collected, when I decided that I wanted to work, I wanted my work to be an expression of my African heritage, I collected every book I could find on African culture. And this is a photograph of an Ndebele woman in South Africa. And they're well known for their costumes, but what I found fascinating about them was the fact that they paint these architectural murals, which are really quite amazing. And it's considered, it's considered part of the household chores, all right? And they decorate the outsides and the insides as well. Yeah. And so I found those patterns to be so strong and so straightforward that they inspired, first of all, a series of tall vessels that I call the Ndebele series. And then a series of earthenware plates that I made, in some ways using some of the patterns from the Ndebele tradition. And these are all about 18 inches. Looking at African culture, I also discovered scarification, which the Christians, once they colonized Africa, discouraged. But I like the kind of surface that it created. And so I did a series of what I call ceremonial bowls, and these are earthenware, pit-fired, with a terra sigillata coating. And I used slip trailing to create those kind of keloid-type patterns on the surface of the forms. And then looking at more African art, I ran across the Maasai people of East Africa. And these two young men are decorating themselves, getting ready for this mating festival that happens every year. And what they do is they cover their bodies with a mixture of animal fat and clay, all right, red clay, white clay. And then they drag their fingers through it. And that reminded me of a technique we use in ceramics called sgraffito. And so I did a series of covered vessels using that idea. African hairstyles inspired this series of pieces. These started out about 4 feet high. They're vessels, so that top part that looks like wings actually lifts off. And these are some variations on that idea. I call this series the Nyama series, and Nyama is a Swahili word, and that means essentially the essential life force or life quality. And I guess in Western culture, we would consider that to be the soul. And so I wanted to make a series of vessels that looked like they could contain that kind of thing. So they started out about 4 feet tall, and then they got bigger and bigger, and these were the last of that series. And all of these are vessels. The tops lift off. Whether anybody would actually do that is hard to say, but that is that piece finished. And it's it's about 6 feet, 3 inches tall. The calabash form is also another form that is very common in East African culture especially. And I started using that as an idea for a series of vases. And this is a photograph from a show that I had at the Everson Museum in Syracuse. And this is a variation on the idea of the calabash, the bulbous bottom with the elongated neck. And these are just variations on that particular idea. Then I wanted to do a series of pieces based on the transatlantic slave trade, all right? And it's something that many African Americans, well, I don't know about many African Americans, but this African American has mixed feelings about, all right? It represents an activity that was conducted purely for profit, dehumanized an entire group of people, but by the same token, if the transatlantic slave trade didn't happen, I wouldn't be here boring you. Yeah. So this is a series of earthenware pieces based upon the idea of the transatlantic slave trade. And then back to the covered jar, different variations on it. Whoa, I didn't know that was in there. Okay. And then the casserole, again, is something that I've been fascinated with. And these are some examples of some contemporary ones. And then the plates, this is a series of plates that I made that I call the quilt series, and I probably made maybe about 20 of these based upon certain quilt patterns. My wife was a quilter, and I would steal ideas from her books, her quilting books. And so all of these are part of the quilt series. And then I like to make things that people use, but I don't like making sets. And so I enjoy making bowls, and I enjoy making cups. And one of the policies I have, if any of you happen to be wandering in Syracuse, I have this policy, if you come to my workshop for the first time, you get to take a cup home. And these are some bowls that I made. That's my house at 113 Clare Road. Google my name, my address will come up, my contact information if you want to claim your free cup. This is my studio, which was built in 1992. Then I had a separate room added onto it, and that became the kill room. And so this is it finished. This is the inside of it. You can see how well organized I am. And I think that's it.
Thank you so much, David. Our next speaker tonight is Fredy Mallqui. Fredy Mallqui began apprenticing with master carvers at the age of 9 in Ayacucho, Peru, and now explores connections, life cycles, and rituals through sculptural storytelling in wood. Dynamic in his art practice, Fredy is an ornamental woodcarver, contemporary sculpture, art restorationist, and woodcarving teacher. Please welcome Fredy.
Wow. what image? Good evening. Thank you so much for being here this night. This is my third year being here, and every time when I came, it's always like the first time. I enjoy the good atmosphere that only you can experience at the ranch. Well, this year is going to be different because I came with my family, my wife and my two daughters. And so please, if you see them everywhere, if they are drawing like crazies, just welcome them and maybe ask them. Um, Today, when we were walking from the hotel that is at the Snowmass village, we take a walk, and we said like, "Gosh, this is like the Andes." And I think that is the big connection that is all about the ranch, and in my hometown, it's very similar to this, and I cannot see that relation of the Rockies and the Andes. So this is the place, basically, or similar places where I grew up, and in the Peruvian Andes. So those are pictures that I took when years ago, maybe 2009, 2008. I was walking with a beautiful girl who now is my wife. So we used to walk on high cliffs, like for hours and hours, maybe days also. And there she is. Um, I don't. I guess I want always to see where and show where I come from. I was born in Ayacucho, Peru, in 1980, and in a very difficult sociopolitical moment. And this is part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was made on 2003. Because of the social political violence that was between 1980 and that year that I was born and until 2000. And basically it was like a lot of violence in my city where everything started. And there was approximately like 80,000 80, 100,000 people who were dead in my city, and this is the last words of this commission that was established on 2001 and was ending on 2003. During those times, I was collecting from mass graves in my city, like T-shirts, pants, and remains from people who were kidnapped and disappeared, and they were like in the mass graves found like these T-shirts, and I used those elements to create my series of painting that was called Peruvian Product, or Producto Peruano in Spanish, and I use different techniques for this series of paintings. So this is me on that year. What I use is a canvas, all painted in red, and then I also baked this type of bread that is we used to make during All Souls Day. And basically, I burned intentionally the bread to commemorate like the faces of these women, especially who were sexually abused and they were like killed during those years. So this is the dough, how I started this technique. And then when I put it on the oven, that's how they came out. Because when you put it on the oven, you don't know how it will come out. So, and that is how I made this series of painting, basically talking about these difficult moments during the 1980s. But during the time when I made this painting, I'm talking about 2008, 2009, 2010, I was very involved with research and talking about death and also about grieving. Because many families had been lost their families and they never found their bodies. So in the Andean culture, not having their dead body, it's like, grieving forever if you don't know where they are. So this series of painting is also part of that series. So those are images of many of these people who has been disappeared during those times. And curiously, I know some of them, and when I was a kid, I couldn't realize why some of them had been disappeared. But years later, when I was researching about what happened with these people, I find out they were kidnapped by the army or by the Shining Path terrorist movement on those years. I was involved and I was researching a lot about death and the relationship of why I'm very I was liking research about this idea of death, and I used to go to cemeteries and assist to the ceremonies. This is the baby, I guess, and they were sharing the food and different elements that maybe the baby liked when it was alive. The baby, she or he was alive. This is, as I said, for some reason I was always involved during those years about researching of dead bodies and babies. And this is called Wawapampay in Quechua, and it's basically the ceremonial of babies who are dead in the Peruvian Andes. And the baby, it's sitting here on this chair. It's made basically as an altarpiece. And the guy here, he's the godfather of the baby, and basically he carries to the cemetery. Yeah, I love that image. It gives you, an idea where it's happening. It's in the high mountains in the Peruvian Andes. So people, follow the procession, and the godfather is always taking the baby on that chair. Also, during those years, I was working as an art conservator, restoring objects of art. But I guess years after this happened, I realized I wasn't only restoring objects of art. I think what it was really happening with me, I was trying to restoring myself. And that connection I did, I realized many years later why I was working restoring objects of art. I was trying really to restore these elements, or I was really trying to restore myself of these traumatic events that I was seeing in my hometown. And I think that is how I like to see restoring, of course, these elements, but restoring myself. Well, changing of subject. Um, as Emil said, I started my training as a wood carver at the age of 9. I didn't go to a school of wood carving or to an art school, but I learned with master carvers. So my first experience was very interesting because usually this type of art is kept as a traditional in the family. And the way how I learned is I called the door, and this old master carver allowed me to stay with him. And for a couple of months, I was working with him, but I wasn't even allowed to touch any of his tools. So what I did on the shop, I was basically just cleaning. I was putting away all the wood on its places, and that's how I started. Maybe it has been past like 6 or 7 months, and then he thankfully allowed me to use, I'm saying thankfully, his tools, and he gave me like a set similar to this for carving. And then I was pretty happy, of course. And then a couple minutes later, he came back with a hammer, and basically what he did is he hold every tool and he punched on the edge of the tool like very hard, and he said, "Okay, you want to learn, right?" So then I was very shocked at that moment. Just imagine 9 years old, very excited, and I went my home crying. I was very upset. I was very sad. And I remember still my mom was terrified when I said what just happened. But somehow I decided to come back to the shop, and I asked the guy, "I want to learn." And he asked me again, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah." And he never showed me how, but he said, "Okay, you want to learn, then sharpen it." So I started to sharpen using stones and sandpapers. Every tool took me, I think, maybe like a month for the whole set to sharpen. And that's how I start my whole practice. So those are works from my early ages. When years later, of course, I realized why this guy did what he did, or what he was trying to teach me. And I realized is be patient. And be patient is something that nobody can teach you, nobody can show you. It's just a way of you have to learn by yourself. That is also another piece from those years. It's made in mahogany, Peruvian mahogany. And this is a large piece, 10 feet by 8 feet. I was commissioned by a client in Pittsburgh. This was on 2018, I guess. And this is the final piece. Yeah, I know. I know. Yeah, I'm pretty good at it, right? So now, during the workshop, basically, that's what I'm waiting for my students to learn, very intricate pieces. And the goal is we have to finish pieces like that. So another big change, influences. As I said, I also come from a city with rich cultural heritage. This belongs to the Wari culture in my city. And these mummies are in my hometown in a museum. But also what I'm also interested about these pieces is not just the element, it's what happened with these babies. Like thinking myself and questioning myself why we, now are like exhibiting these elements, like disturbing their sleep of these babies. Why it's, our sense of like exploration of everything. And those are my inspiration where everything comes, what some of my works are from. Like this pottery work, it's also in my city. This is a grape representation. This is also like a funeral from the Wari culture, how it was set it up. Many potteries. And this is how I created, inspired from them. And actually, this is my first time ever making lithography. And I did this during my past artist in residency here at the ranch. And I was, I guess, inspired by those images, but at the same time, but the master printer at the ranch, Brian, who helped me a lot on this to make this print. And thank you so much, Brian, for that. Seeds. And seeds are always present on my work. And I like textures, and I like how tactile they can be, and that is something I would like to inspire my students. This is another work similar to the other, like also inspire on those clay elements from the Wari culture. This is another piece that I made. It's called Skunk. As a kid, I used to hear like stories from my father when we used to smell that very strong smell from the skunk during the night, and they always told us, don't go outside, because if you go outside and you are seen from this creature, you might be die. And we always were like so afraid in the middle of the night, because it was nothing to do during those days. And but they never told us what exactly was that animal or that creature, because I think they even they didn't know what it was. But years later, I learned that animal was the skunk. So that is where it comes from, the inspiration, this element, from those nights of storytelling from my father and my mother, and I always kept those moments very vividly. And I also would like to introduce this current project that I'm working with Pittsburgh International Airport. It's Connections. That is the title of my work, and it's inspired in what is Pittsburgh, and it's also about connection. What is happening in an airport? Connecting flights, connecting lives, connecting cultures, connecting textures, connecting people, connecting also experiences. So I'm working on these pieces currently. As you could notice, the size of these pieces are like 7 feet high, 3 feet depth, and 6 feet wide. When I start, I usually do my drawings, like that. That is the first drawing, and then that is the model. That is just the model. So when I'm talking about connection, it seems like these two different elements or these two different bodies are trying to connect, but connecting what? That is also part of the same series of work. And they are going to be installed on the carousel baggage platform. So this is how I start my work with big logs of wood, and I use chainsaw, grinders, and of course hand tools, and that is basically like 60% done. The type of wood is called catalpa, and it's a very gentle type of wood. This is the last piece that I'm working for the airport. It is a sphere that is basically hanging, and there is my wife working on this piece. The flowers, it was actually made in the ranch. And Emil, he was the responsible to help me out how to cut these flowers from veneer. And I think he was corrupting me because supposed to be my work, it's handmade, but we use the laser cutting machine. And but I know it was pretty easy and it went very fast, and I was like amazed. Oh gosh, this is so easy, I think. So this is how it's going set it up, each petal. So in total, we cut almost 1,500 flowers. So this is how supposed to be is going to be like. And this is the last piece also for that. It's a bench where people can be sitting on, because the sculptures people are not allowed to touch. So, but this bench, it's to sit in. This is my last series of work that I did in Pittsburgh. I collaborated with these two amazing artists, Steve Gurish and Sans Facon, and they were searching for for a carver who does like architectural elements, because that is very difficult to find here. So they hired me, and I did this amazing Ionic Capitol in the middle of the forest in Pittsburgh. And so I have to work there on site. So that is how I usually start. Roughing it out, marking where I have to go, because you have to think, it's not just from the top, you have to see from both sides and from underneath how to, make that work. For the egg darts, I use like templates. I mark them and go with it with chisels or cabin tools. Every detail, it's by hand. The egg darts, the canthus leaf, the scroll. So it gives you an idea, how big it is. I think some of the challenges of this project was you have to work around it, and you don't have the choice of moving the piece at your convenience. You have to work with it. So that is the final piece. So I think it's 20 feet in length, and I think it's 5 feet in diameter. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much, Fredy. We have time for a little bit of a Q&A. So we'll set up these chairs up here for the artists, and if anyone wants to raise their hand and have a question, I'll pass the mic.
And I'll fix the lights too so they're not right in your eyes. Thank you.
No, I was just curious how long it took you to work on that column.
On the column, I think maybe 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks. I know, I'm pretty fast. Because, as I said, usually I start with chainsaw, like roughing it out, and grinders, and then the final touches are by the gouges, the carving tools. That is the most time-consuming part of it, because with a chainsaw in one day you can finish, because it's very quick. It just runs, it cuts like butter, and the same, with the hand tools, it's also very soft, as the wood is still green. It was red oak. Yeah, I mean, you might think it's very hard because oaks are hard, but when they are green, it's very soft. Yeah, when they are green, are very soft. Any type of wood.
I have a question, sorry, for both artists. Hi. Yeah, I feel like both of you are working with some really dark, traumatic histories. Just dealing with the subject matter, right, of your work, and also thinking about generational trauma, inherited trauma. But I'm curious to know how you both kind of went into the direction of a medium that is craft-oriented or focused on pattern, and if that process is a way of, in some way, coping with that history.
Well, the first part of your question about starting from some place that's dark, I was just reacting to what was happening around me in the country at that time. I really was angry. I considered myself to be an angry black man. Now I'm older and just a little pissed off, but I had a one-man show in Syracuse during the mid-70s. And it was a show full of the images of anger and pain and frustration. And one of the things that made me start to think about what direction I wanted my art to go was at the opening reception, you're surrounded by people who are commenting and complimenting you on your work. But I kept noticing this little elderly white woman that seemed as if she wanted to approach me, but someone else would engage me in a conversation, and she would just kind of fade into the crowd. Well, by the end of the reception, and the crowd had thinned, and I guess she saw an opportunity to come and talk to me, and she complimented me on my work and how well executed it was and things like that. But then she asked me if she could ask me one more question. And I said, sure, I thought it would be, who do I make the check out to? And her question was there anything that I can remember that was positive about being black in America? And up until that time, I had sat through hundreds of hours of critiques. And that's what academia is famous for. You know, my undergraduate professor used to say, if you wish to have the simple made complex, give it to an intellectual. You know, and so this question that this woman asked me quite innocently, and I don't recall what my response was because it kind of caught me off guard. But I do know that that was when I started thinking about wanting my art to be about something of a celebration. I wanted my art to be about something positive. I didn't want my children to inherit my sense of victimhood and my anger. And so that's when I started directing my art towards something that I was proud of. And I was proud of being an heir to this artistic tradition that existed long, many, many years, many centuries prior to the European civilization. Does that answer your question?
I think this is a kind of exploration and questioning myself when I go back all the time to the same point. And for example, 2 years ago, when I went with my family, the four of us for the first time, because we went before just the three of us, but the four of us went for the first time to Peru, and we stayed for almost 2 months in my city and other cities too. And the day when we were coming back, and we were like just landing to the airport in Lima, Peru, and we heard from somebody who was sitting in front of us, and he said something like, the president is, what? ¿Cómo se? Yeah, the president, the current president is make a coup. And we were like, what? And like in 1 second, like all of those memories from my childhood came, and thinking, like, gosh, now what are we going to do now? What's going to happen to us? And you know, I was with my 2 kids. I mean, so scared, like I wasn't like years. And I think the conclusion of it is like, I don't think that's going to like pass, unfortunately, because after that happened, a week later in my city, the army, during a protest, they killed, I think it was 11 people. And the government, they said because they were terrorists. But they were just protesting. And among those dead people were kids. And when they did the investigation, nobody of them were like, have any connection with any type of terror attack. They were just protesting. So I think those issues for me will be coming again and again. And that's why I think right now I'm working on a series of work that is going to be called Nightmares, because those nightmares are just there. But at the same time, I think through the art, it's a kind of curation. I'm trying to cure from those issues, but I guess I know it's not going to happen, unfortunately. Yeah, it's just going to be a stay there.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Freddie and David. Just a reminder, 8:45 a.m. here in Shermer is going to be our ranch-wide orientation, so please be here at that time. Thank you very much.